So, welcome to this first session in a planned series of sessions of some teachings from a very good friend of mine, Pastor Lewis Clementson, who is sitting here right beside me. I think what he has to say has worth for many people today, as we are living in the last days, just before Jesus returns, and there is no time left to be separated from him, I would say. And in order to do that, you have to understand that Jesus is not some kind of mythical figure. He's not some guy sitting on a cloud or written in a dusty book. He's very much alive today, and you can actually have a personal relationship with him, talk to him every day. And that for me is being a Christian. Being a Christian also means that you have the Holy Spirit inside you. God's Spirit is residing in your body that is in the Bible called the temple of God. And as in all situations, when you get very advanced, I would say, advanced Christian, has spent a lot of time together with the Lord and the Holy Spirit, you can reach a very, very high level of relationship, personal relationship with the Lord. You can actually sit there at the throne on his right side with the Father, meet the Father too. And all this, Lewis, my friend here, has done. He has met Jesus 20 times. He has ascended to heaven, met the Holy Father, and he speaks to Jesus and the Holy Spirit every day. And I thought it might be a good idea to let Lewis share this. 1 year ago, I read this book, exactly 1 year ago, September 2017, Heaven Can't Wait, How to Ascend to Heaven and Enter the Father's Presence as a Son, by Lewis Clementson. I thought it was a fascinating book. This is fantastic, how you can actually ascend to heaven and talk to the creator of the universe. And then I heard that Lewis was coming here to Riga to preach in October last year. So I met Lewis the first time on a service here in Riga. We started to develop a friendship. Eventually we started to talk about creating a church together, and here we are. So, Lewis, you are an American, a former lawyer who gave up everything you had to serve the Lord. It's a fascinating story, I guess. Could you please share what happened? Why are you here in Riga today and not in US, like acting as a lawyer?
Well, first, Michael, let me just thank you for having me here. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to meet with you and to present these lessons that the Lord has given me. It all started with a dream, and in this dream, Jesus appeared to me and called me to go to France. And so we did. We sold our farm and property in Virginia, and we moved to southern France.
Why France?
I don't know.
Places.
I don't know, but that's where Jesus told us to go.
He told you to go to France?
Well, in the dream, I was on a warship, and Jesus was standing to my side, to my left, and we were on the bridge of a warship looking out over the bow, and the ship was headed towards the southern coast of France. And so I took that to mean that he wanted us to go to southern France, and he sure enough did meet us there when we got there.
So what did you do when you came to France? You had the soldier, everything you had, and you just went as missionaries, I guess, to France?
Yes, we really didn't know what lay ahead of us, but as soon as we set up shop, the Lord was right there with us in a very powerful way. I had been a Christian for about 38 years and pretty fired up Pentecostal all that time, but I had never known such a powerful and consistent presence of God like we had in that house. We were in a little village called Cornilla de la Rivière. It's about 14 kilometers west of Perpignan in the Catalonia region of southwest France. And we'd spend 8-10 hours a day with the Lord, and it was fun. Every minute of it was exciting fun because He was there with us.
What do you mean 8-10 hours spending with the
I know
Lord?
it. Now, when I say it, it sounds quite unrealistic or unimaginable, but at the time, our excitement level was so high and His presence was so strong that every minute of that was fun and exciting. We would pray and we'd worship and we'd read the Bible and we'd read books and just one thing after the other with the Lord, and it was just every day was closer and closer to God.
So it was Jesus who was there with you. I know there is the Godhead is three persons. It's God Father Himself, it's Jesus, and it's the Holy Spirit. Was it the Holy Spirit you spent time with, or was it Jesus Himself, or was it God Father? Who was it? I think many think this is very confusing about the Trinity of God.
Well, the Trinity became much more real to us as we progressed in this journey, because the journey really consisted of 3 steps, one step for each person of the Godhead. And initially, we set about to make friends with the Holy Spirit.
Friends?
Yes.
Kidding.
No. What happened was this. Without really any direction other than the Lord had said, you can pray all you want afterwards, but give me 1 hour. So we started our day with 1 hour of worship. And this led to a time when the Holy Spirit spoke to me and He said, I want us to become friends.
Wow.
Yeah, this was the life-changing moment when He said, I want us to become friends. And I said, well, how do we do that? And He said, you have to gain my trust.
Wow.
And so I set about the task of gaining the trust of the Holy Spirit. And so the first step was devoted to making friends with the Holy Spirit. And after that, it was the Holy Spirit said, now we are friends, now you are my friend, I'm going to take you to see Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's when my visions actually began.
Your visions in your inner mind about Jesus and heaven, or what do you mean?
Well, what happened is right after the Holy Spirit, and making friends with the Holy Spirit was like 5 months. I mean, this was not an overnight thing. This was the process of Him cleaning me up. When He says, you have to gain my trust, what He means by that is, you have to do everything I say.
Mm-hmm.
And everything He had to say had to do with cleaning me up. He finally had my attention after 38 years of Him living inside of me, with me ignoring all the things in me that He didn't like having in me. And so this was not a quick thing, because He had to, it took a lot of time. It took several months for me to gain His trust. And then when He said, now we are friends, I'm going to take you to see Jesus.
Wow.
And I was actually laying on my bed with my eyes closed when he said this, and this was a vision of Jesus in my head. It's recorded in Daniel 7, where Daniel, who had any number of visions, which are very popular topics of conversation nowadays, but Daniel says, I had a vision of the Lord in my head as I lay on my bed. And that's what I had. I had a vision of the Lord in my head as I lay on my bed, and yet they were very clear picture of Jesus.
And I have to ask you, obviously, how does he look?
Well, he's the very first impression that I had was he is so happy. In fact, the first thing out of my mouth as soon as I saw him is I just blurted out spontaneously. I said, Lord, you're so happy. And he didn't say anything in reply, but I had a revelation immediately of why he's so happy. He's so happy because he did everything that he was asked to do, which was no small thing, and he did it perfectly and he did it completely. And at the same time, I had this feeling of it was like a vibration in heaven, that all of heaven vibrates with the knowledge of Christ's perfect and complete redemptive work. There was not a corner of heaven that wasn't just vibrating.
Do you mean like some kind of energy?
Yes. Yes, it wasn't just the knowledge of what he had done, but it was this power in what he had done in his mighty redemptive work. And then, of course, I looked at him closely, and he was about this far from me, about as far as you are from me now. He's a little bit taller than I am. He's about 6 feet tall, and he has dark brown hair and dark blue eyes, and he's very good looking. And I had thought that he would look more Jewish.
Yes, isn't he?
He did not look classically Jewish at all. He had more of a universal look. Like I said, I had always thought he would look very Jewish, but he looked more universal. He had dark blue eyes, dark brown hair.
Blue eyes, not brown eyes.
Correct. He had dark blue eyes and dark brown hair, shoulder length, the beard, and very nice looking, and the thing that struck me so was he seemed to be happy to be with me.
Wow.
I was very surprised that he seemed to be happy to be with me. He wasn't distracted. He was never rolling his eyes, wondering why do I have to talk to this boring man?
Oh.
Right. He never took his eyes off of me. He never showed the least bit of boredom or lack of interest. He was intensely with me. He was always looking right at me. He never took his eyes off of me. He never showed anything other than excitement about being with me, which surprised me enormously. And he of course spoke to me. And I saw him about 20 times. I don't remember exactly how many, but it's about 20 times. I saw him, and it was only with one exception it was just him from that shoulder up. I didn't see any background. I didn't see any streets of gold or rivers or animals or pastures. It was just him. And
but you felt the vibrations, the energy, you said.
yes. when I said, Lord, you're so happy, and then it just whew, hit me about why he's so happy, because of his redemptive work, that he had done it. He had done everything he needed to do.
You also write in your book that Jesus asked you if you want to meet the Father.
Well, yes, the first thing the thing that he said every time, he said different things each of the 20 times. Well, there's one thing that he said every time, and that was about his redemption. But on the 20th visit with him, he asked me, can you hate sin as much as I do?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Lord, I don't know that it would be very difficult, but I'll try. And as soon as I said that, he took me to see his Father.
Wow.
You know?
So you were actually there meeting the creator of the universe?
Yes, I didn't see him. You can't see him, but his presence and where I was very clear to me, yes.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
So
And it's all in the Bible, it's all in Ephesians.
Yes. So what are you referring to in Ephesians, if people want to look it up and read it?
Well, in Ephesians 2, Paul writes, we are raised up together with Christ, we are seated with Christ in the heavenlies. And I had always taken this as just some kind of download of revelation into Paul. But after it happened to me, I understood that Paul was actually writing about something that he had done. And when I read this with new eyes, I understood this, that Paul was writing about what he had done.
Mm-hmm.
He had been raised up together with Christ. He had been seated with Christ in the heavenlies, because I could say, I know this, Paul, because I did it.
You told me once that you actually met Paul too in heaven one time.
Yes.
Can you tell people about this too?
Yes, yes. During one of my visits, it was later on in my visits, Jesus asked me, is there anybody that you'd like to meet? And I immediately said, yes, Lord, my dad. My father was a typical World War II veteran,
Mm-hmm.
very hard man. I can count the number of times he spoke to me on my fingers. He was just a hard man, and he had 4 children, and he never spoke to any of us. They never once took me on his lap and hugged me. Never once told me he loved me. Never once gave me any advice about life or told me about the birds and the bees. He never spoke to us. But anyway, I just knew immediately that when Jesus asked me, is there anybody you want to see? I said, my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an extremely moving moment for me to be able to see my dad. And then I ended up seeing 17 different saints. And I saw Paul twice.
You spoke to him?
Yes, briefly.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord had shown me what to say to these saints when I saw them. I was not to ask them for guidance per se, but what advice do you have for me? So each time the Lord would bring a saint to me, I would say, what advice do you have for me? And 2 of them actually said, my best advice to you is to make friends with the Holy Spirit.
Which you already had done.
And so that rang a bell with me,
Wow.
of course. But I can say that, and I do say that if there's one bit of advice that I can give any Christian, it is to make friends with the Holy Spirit.
And how do you do that?
You have to gain his trust.
And how do you do that?
You have to do what he says. You have to really earnestly want to be friends with him, and you have to do whatever he says to gain his trust. You have to come to the realization that the Holy Spirit is inside of you. You're not succeeding in hiding yourself from Him. He knows everything about you. He knows all the stuff in you that you're pretending He doesn't know. He does know it. He's in there. He wants to clean out the pipeline so that He can be released from you in ministry. He wants out. He wants to be released from you to do the acts of God, to do the works of God.
Yes. When you were there in heaven, you write about that in some book, I don't know, you have one more book, we will talk about that also, Receive More from God, a thinner book. You said, you wrote in, or if it was this book, you wrote that tell people this, you got a message from Jesus that He wanted you to, when you came back here to this world, tell people this.
Yes.
What was it?
In each of my visits with Jesus, He said different things, but He always said one thing every time. 20 times He told me the same thing, and it went something like this. Mm-hmm. My redemptive work was perfect and complete. I provided for every need of man. I left nothing out. Tell people this. So, here He is, 20 times telling me this. Now, after like the third or fourth time, I'm thinking to myself, Lord, I know this. I heard you the first time. Why are you telling me again? Well, He goes on to tell me this same thing 20 times. And so after the vision stopped, I began to ponder this. And I thought, the Lord always has a reason for everything He does. And so there was a reason, a good reason, that He was telling me the same thing 20 times. And it had to be that I wasn't getting it.
You mean he could see in your heart that you didn't absorb what He was saying?
Yes.
Okay.
He had to keep telling me because I wasn't getting it. And so after I began to seek the Lord about what it was I wasn't getting, then He showed me what He wanted us to know so that we can receive more from His perfect redemptive work. If I was to divide my Christian walk into two parts, it would be the first 40 years and then the last 6 years. Now, I've been a Pentecostal Christian my entire Christian life, and even a faith Christian. But my success in receiving from the Lord and ministering His redemption to others really took off when I implemented the simple things that Jesus showed me.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I would say that my success rate is 10 times as high in the last 6 years.
Compared to the previous 36.
The previous 40, yeah.
And you are saying that anyone can do this?
Yes.
Anyone can reach that level of intimacy with Jesus and be friend with Holy Spirit?
Yes, anybody can do that. And anybody can implement the simple things He showed me about ministering and receiving His redemption. These things are so simple, and you probably already believe them, but people are not receiving like they can. For my first 40 years, of course, I went to a lot of church services, and I saw a lot of prayer lines, and I prayed for a lot of people. And by and large, people come up for prayer, and they say, would you pray for me for so-and-so? And you say yes, and you pray for them. And most of the time, nothing happens. And I saw conferences where thousands of people would get prayed for by top Christians, and the testimonies were very few, if not non-existent. And it just really pained him. The thing that I got the most from being with Jesus is how eager he is for people to receive what he paid so dearly to provide. And people are not receiving this because they're not doing some very simple things.
That sounds fascinating. So if you don't, if you're a Christian and you pray and you feel like, oh, I never get any replies on my prayers. I never feel that presence of the God. It's all about you doing it in the wrong way. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And that's it. That's fantastic. And I think we will save this for the next video. Then you can dig deeper into what you write in this fascinating pamphlet, Receive More from God, and tell people how to receive more from God. I think we save that until next video. So for this time, Lewis, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
We will be back.